Miracle Mayhem in DC, Giants preview. We got so much to break down. Let's have a podcast. Hey there. Good evening, folks. Welcome to Commanders Gridiron. I'm your host, Steve Lockman, where we talk about all things Washington Commanders on the field and off the field. Thank you for joining me again on our weekly show. As you see the scrolling bubble there at the bottom, you'll see the topics for tonight. We're going to try and stay in close order to that as we can. As you can see, we're going to have a lot to talk about tonight. Bears recap, the Hail Mary breakdown, game nuggets, game balls and gassers, the New York Giants preview for Week 9, and our Week 9 picks. As always, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Twitch, feel free to jump into that comments box on whatever platform you're watching. Throw in a comment, throw in a question, throw in some dialogue. Love to have some interaction, even if it's about your team and not my team, how your team's doing. Especially if you're an NFC East fan, we love to talk some trash back and forth. So feel free to use that comment box. Jump in with any of the topics that we're talking about, and we'll have a little back and forth tonight. As always, we typically start our show with some off-the-field news. And, look, for the way this team's been playing and the game that we had on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, number 1 versus number 2 overall draft picks in this year's NFL draft, there's not a whole lot of off-the-field news. So let's get right into the game, right? Bears came to town in Landover, Maryland, home of the Washington Commanders on Sunday for an afternoon game. Looked to be a thriller. And in all honesty, it kind of lived up to it. It wasn't a very high-scoring game like a lot of people thought it was going to be, myself included. I wasn't that far off on the final score prediction, but, hey, look, it kind of is what it is, and that's the way it is on a weekly basis in the NFL. But, the game did not disappoint. A lot of factors came into it. We're going to break it all down. We got plays to break down. We got Hail Marys to break down, touchdowns that didn't get called or overturned, why people weren't on the field, why clowns were on the field at the end of the game, the whole 9 yards, et cetera, et cetera. We got a lot to talk about. So let's get into it, right? Started off, Bears get to kick off to start the game. And what do you know? Chicago goes right, I don't want to say right down the field, but puts a decent little drive together, right? So the fact that, you think it's going to be leading up to that back and forth. But Washington's defense has been picking up a lot over the last 2 to 3 weeks, way more than what they were in the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, which is tremendous. Now, a lot of that may be due to the fact that John Allen is out for the year with an injury. Some guys are coming back from injury. Dorrance Armstrong and Fowler had a superb week the last 2 weeks. So, secondary is actually kind of starting to play a little bit better, as we saw against, the 3 prolific wide receivers from the Chicago Bears. So kind of all the pieces are kind of starting to fall into place. Jayden Daniels had his first practice of the week on Friday, coming back from his rib injury. We knew as long as he made it to practice on Friday, was able to do the walkthroughs on Saturday, he was playing on Sunday. Teams aren't going to come out and give that information up early in the week to give the other team, who they're going to be able to play against to prep against. It's kind of just the way the NFL works, right? So, going into the week, especially Tuesday, Wednesday practices, and even Thursday for that matter, Marcus Mariota, backup quarterback, got basically all of the first team reps. Jayden Daniels stayed after, worked with Mariota and Cliff Kingsbury on Wednesday, Thursday, did his virtual reps on Wednesday, Thursday. So, kind of if you read between the lines, you knew Jalen was going to come back on Sunday, barring any setbacks, right? And you knew that he wasn't going to be 100%. Let's chalk it up around 85, maybe 90. Took a couple hard hits, but overall had a pretty solid game. One of the things that helped us out a lot early in the first quarter, defense came out strong, put pressure on Caleb Williams, and I really expected the Bears' offensive line and offensive unit to be a lot more in sync and cohesive and not flat than what they were. Bears were coming off a bye last week, so they didn't have a game, well rested, decent amount of practice time, was able to, prep and get ready for the team and a mobile quarterback in Jayden Daniels. And, let's be honest, let's call it as it is. Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick out of USC, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if he tried. High, low, skipping balls, wide, left, right. Just wasn't happening. And then, oh, by the way, the Commanders were doing what they left off the last 2 weeks and stopping the run. So it was a matter of, hey, would they be able to stop Caleb Williams and the 3 wide receivers, DJ Moore, rookie Ruma Dunze, tight end Cole Kmet, who basically was non-existent until like the fourth quarter. And it kind of is what it is, right? So final score ended up being 18-15. We're going to break it down how we got to that because, look, it was a low-scoring game until the fourth quarter, basically swapping field goals back and racking up field goals for Washington, gave up a long touchdown for the Bears, and then it was kind of from there, right? But one of the first things that we're going to talk about, and it kind of, made the news of the game, not necessarily, the Hail Mary or the play leading up to that, because we're going to tackle all that in its own segment. But Jayden Daniels threw a really nice pass to Zach Ertz in the corner, basically trailing him into the corner of the end zone. And unfortunately, the referees on the field called it an incomplete pass. So, of course, Washington takes their time getting up to the line, gives them a chance. The coaches up in the box and some other guys gives them a chance to review it, signal down to Quinn, hey, you want to challenge it? Hey, you don't want to challenge it? Move on with the game, right? They decided that Quinn was going to decide to challenge it. Because at that point in time, we already had 3 points. This could have gave us a touchdown, helped us go up 10-0, But, one of the things that's super hard to do with touchdown passes that are incomplete or fumbles or basically not ruled a touchdown is to overturn that with concise and clear evidence by the replay booth or the replay assistant, right? And the head referee. So there's actually an article that came out by basically questioning the replay official, as far as, hey, can you explain what you saw, why you did what you did? This call basically could have went either way. You could have went to one side of, hey, look, if it was ruled a touchdown on the field, it probably would not have been overturned. Being that it was ruled incomplete, it made it a lot harder to be overturned. When you look at it and they slow it down frame by frame, and it's not, bang, bang, real time, split second, catch the ball, go to the ground. Did he maintain control? That's kind of what they were looking at, right? But Washington was up 6-0 with over 5 minutes left and remaining in the first half. Daniels found tight end Zach Ertz in the front corner of the end zone to the right for what was going to be the game's first touchdown. However, the officials on the field ruled it incomplete. So after the game, NFL Vice President of Instant Replay, Mark Butterworth, issued the following statement about the controversial call. The ruling on the field was an incomplete pass. After the challenge flag was thrown, for us to overturn it, we needed clear and obvious video evidence that he actually had control of the ball before it hit the ground. There were 2 different angles we used, and he didn't have his hand completely under the ball. And then you look at it right after the hand and the ball had contact with the ground, his hands were they say were off the ball momentarily. The NFL created this problem, and fans have been confused ever since a couple years ago when, basically nobody knows what's a catch, what's not a catch, that kind of deal, right? But that's basically kind of the short version of why it wasn't a touchdown. If you go back and watch the replay, and I did it again, Ertz's hand was underneath the ball the whole time, so it didn't necessarily separate. So I don't know where the NFL replay saw it separate from the ball, but what you did see was the ball basically rotate in that hand as it was hitting the ground with him on top, right? So the ball was moving. So then the question is, does he maintain control? Is it moving too much that he doesn't have control? Blah, 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 blah. And that's basically what I think they were looking at is the fact that the ball actually moved The tip kind of hit the ground as his hands up here, and incomplete touchdown. So we settle for another field goal. So what does that mean? Going into halftime, we went into the halftime with a 9-3 lead over the 9-0 lead over the Chicago Bears. Coming out in the second half, Washington got the ball, kind of stuttered, didn't really look fluid, didn't look as good offensively at the beginning of the third quarter as we did in the first half. I like the fact that Kingsbury was trying to keep it balanced in the first half, trying to run the ball to keep the Bears honest. So that way, Jayden could hit the long balls, hit the play action, hit some screens, hit some, other passing options that would keep the Bears on their feet, right? But unfortunately, every time we got to the red zone, field goal, field goal, field goal. What did this feel like? Another Giants game where basically we're going to kick like 7 field goals, right? That's the way it was going, because going into the third quarter, we kicked another field goal to go up 12-0. Then one of the things that I think was basically a game changer, gave life to Chicago, basically kind of reinvigorated them, gave them some momentum, was the fact that DeAndre Swift broke out for, oh my goodness, like a 55, 60-yard touchdown run. And, basically, even though there was a tackle/hold to one of our secondary members on that run, and it should have been called back, wasn't called. There were a lot of missed calls for both Washington side and Chicago side. So overall, the officiating was absolutely horrendous on Sunday evening. But, it's just one of those plays where, it happened, whatever. Score's now 12-7. We're not up by much. Still over a field goal, so that, hey, look, the pressure's on to make Chicago score another touchdown. So then Chicago goes down the field in the fourth quarter with 25 seconds left, gets a 1-yard touchdown run courtesy of a pass interference call to get down to the 1-yard line on Benjamin St-Juste. Bears were able to convert the 2-point conversion to make it 15-12. As we all know, we've seen it on all the sports shows on every major sports network and the local channels as well. 0 seconds left. Jayden Daniels drops back to pass, scrambles 40 yards laterally throughout that whole thing, extends the play for like 10 to 12 seconds, throws a 65-yard Hail Mary, caught by Noah Brown in the end zone to make the final score 18-15. But, hey, we got to break it down a little bit as we usually do. So let's look at where everything went, right? Washington got the nod in total yardage, 481 to 307. Jayden had probably his best game of the season for passing at 313 yards to Caleb Williams 111. Rushing yards, Washington had 168. And aside from, the long run by DeAndre Swift, the Bears racked up 196 rushing yards. So, if you take away the big momentous play and one other play where he actually hurdled a Washington defender, basically you're back down to around that 100, 125 yards that we talked about that Washington is kind of known to keep their opponents rushing totals to, right? We were 30% on third down efficiency, 5 out of 15. The Bears struggled on third down, which was really good for us, getting them off the field. They were 2 for 12. We did not go forward on fourth down at all. The Bears were unsuccessful in their only fourth down try. Probably another good thing for both teams, but especially the Commanders, each team gave up 2 sacks. It seemed like we sacked Caleb a lot more, but it's probably just hurried rushes and pressures and keeping them uneasy to make quick throws that were inaccurate or, throw it out of bounds, etc. We did rack up 5 penalties for 30 yards. Once again, no fumbles, no interceptions, great things, and squeaked out the time of possession over 5 minutes more than the Chicago Bears at 32. So, basically on this back and forth scoring bonanza, if you want to call it that, the Commanders-Bears game was the first game since 1977 where each team scored a go-ahead touchdown in the final 30 seconds. Pretty crazy to think about, right? Because you think like, oh, hey, a team scores a touchdown to go ahead in the game and win, or a team will kick a field goal and another team will kick a field goal to win by 1 or 3 or whatever. But this is the first time since 77 where both teams scored a go-ahead touchdown in the final 30 seconds. But, as all the storylines, all the drama going into this game, whether or not both quarterbacks were healthy, take that out of the equation. Everybody knew that, hey, look, it's number 1 draft pick versus number 2. Well, how did they do? Let's take a look at how they did, right? Now, let's give you a little context to the numbers you see on your screen. The total yards is passing and rushing for each quarterback, respectively. So obviously the nod and almost double goes to Jayden Daniels, 378 to Caleb's 172. I really thought that Caleb was going to come out and pass and be able to pass for a lot more yardage than he did, right? I mean, when, you're only passing, your total was 111 yards. Got to figure that Caleb Williams would have at least lit us up for 200, maybe pushing 3 for as cheesy as our secondary's been. But, hey, look, they played pretty good ball, especially against that trio of wide receivers that they have. And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. Jayden continued his hot streak of completion percentage, a little bit lower than where it normally has been over the last couple of weeks. Usually he's up around like 65, 70%. But, hey, a little over half of your passes completed, still a great number, right? Caleb Williams still dropped in 41.6% completion percentage. Obviously, there's only 1 touchdown. We're going to talk about it in a couple seconds. Neither rookie quarterback, had an interception, which was probably even as big of a note for both of these guys going into this game. Chicago's got a really prominent defense. Washington had a decent linebacking core in front 4, given pressure, with the secondary being, kind of half Swiss cheese. We might be able to get another takeaway, but we didn't. And then, of course, the passer ratings at the bottom. Jayden won that battle at 92.7 passer rating to Caleb's 59.5. So it's super interesting that, you look at where the quarterbacks played and then you kind of work backwards, right? So, look, it's just one of those deals where, the quarterbacks kind of did what they had to do for what they were given, for reading the defenses, reading the blitzes, taking the pressures. How good was their individual running games, respectively, for each team, right? And it basically was going to come down to the last, basically 2 minutes. Chicago was driving down the field. At that point in time in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, Chicago had the momentum. Let's be honest. Let's call it as it is, right? So Chicago goes down the field. They're driving. They pick up that crucial ticky-tacky pass interference call on Benjamin St. Juste, who is very handsy, who is probably one of our biggest receivers of pass interference calls so far this season, right? He's a good cornerback. I'm not going to call him solid, not going to call him great, enough to do his job. But he also penalizes our team with pass interference calls. Gives them the ball right at the 1 yard line with just under 2 minutes left to go. So, of course, I'm thinking DeAndre Swift's going to run it in, bootleg run, something, they're scoring, right? So how are we going to break it down? So basically they score with literally, with like 30 seconds left in the game. So, at that point in time, can we get the field goal? Maybe not, right? It basically need a touchdown to win. So what happens? Here's where we're going to break down the series of plays and events that everybody's been talking about since Sunday afternoon, because it's probably the biggest play of week 8. So Chicago kicks it off to Washington. Washington actually elects to bring the kickoff return out, doesn't do a bad job, takes it out to like the 25, 30 yard line, somewhere around the 27, 28. Not bad field position to start. Chicago is basically going to go into a prevent defense, for lack of better terms, a quasi prevent, because they didn't really prevent anything. Washington runs the ball once. Washington passes, takes the ball a couple more yards down the field. Now, the next 2 plays, which is basically what sets up the game-winning touchdown, or is the game-winning touchdown, is twofold, right? In most cases, and this is where a lot of times quarterback coaches will differ on approaches to the ending of the game, right? Basically, what happens, Washington is still out of range to basically pull off a Hail Mary, right? For the next play after this. So everybody knows that, look, hey, your wide receiver is going to run. They're going to do 10. They're going to do 15. They're going to do outs. They're going to do quick comebacks. They're going to do hitches, whatever. Basically, catch the ball 10 to 15 yards, get out of bounds, stop the clock, reset the chains, right? Now, a lot of teams will basically stack the outside of the field every 10 yards with a defender, whether it's linebackers, whether it's moving the secondary up and splitting them in half or whatever, and basically keeping one or two guys back deep so nobody gets long, and then basically stacking two more guys towards the line of scrimmage on the sidelines. So that way the opposing team, in this case the Commanders, would have to catch the ball, can't get out of bounds, clock runs out, you get your yardage, you can't get up to the line of scrimmage in time to spike the ball, run another play, etc. But the Bears go into a deep prevent, and basically that allows Jayden to find Terry McLaurin for about 15 yards, get the first down. Terry's cognizant enough, as the pro that he is, to run out of bounds, stop the clock, reset the chains, and now that puts them with the ball on like the 40-yard line, something like that, right around the 40-yard line. So this basically gives you the chance now to throw the Hail Mary. So if you back up and say, like, hey, look, if the Bears would have went into that sideline kind of like prevent defense where they would have made everything come into the middle of the field, there wouldn't have been a Hail Mary play, because now the line of scrimmage would have been 15 yards back further, which instead of a 65-yard Hail Mary pass, you're now looking at, 80, right? Jayden's not going to throw an 80-yard Hail Mary pass. But now, instead, here we go. So when you look at the final play, a lot of stuff, a lot of breakdowns, a lot of good for the Commanders, not necessarily just the catch, but because of the Bears' flaws in their personnel, which we're going to break down, right? Here's number one. They only rushed 3 guys. They had 4 up on the line, but they had a guy spying Jayden Daniels for whatever freaking reason. Did they really think Jayden's going to run for 60 yards to get the game-winning touchdown? No. The linebacker literally didn't even rush. He just ran laterally side to side as Jayden was scrambling to buy time for his wide receivers and tight end down there to make the Hail Mary mass, if you will, right before the end zone. So basically they only had 3 guys rushing Jayden Daniels. Awesome. Less guys rushing than there were linemen there to block, right? That's number one. So why did we have a guy from the Bears spying Jayden Daniels and not even rushing, or containing him to the left or the right or even just the middle, right? That's number one. Number 2, the best player for Chicago's defense, former Commander Montez Sweat, who had a sack, at least one of the 2 sacks, might even had both, on Jayden Daniels earlier in the day. Bunch of pressures, made him hurry a couple times, made him scramble a couple times, wasn't even on the field for the last play of the game. So, what does that say as a head coach when, okay, I get it, the probability of making a Hail Mary is, as the pro stat guys were saying yesterday and today, was like 20%, 24% to make a Hail Mary. Why would you not have your best defender on the field to create that pass rush? If Montez Sweat was on that field, as much as it pains me to say this, I feel confident that Jayden Daniels is not going to have 10 to 12 seconds to run laterally back and forth for 40 yards with Montez Sweat chasing him there. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, the defensive front scheme. Even though you're only rushing 3, 4 with the spy guy from the linebacker, all you do is a straight up rush, pressure, whatever you want to call it, right? Basic pass defense. Look, let's be honest. Jayden Daniels was uncomfortable because of his rib injuries all day. Took a couple solid rib hits throughout the afternoon and the evening. One from Montez Sweat. And basically there was, most quarterbacks, especially for him, he'd rather roll out to the right, bootleg to the right, scramble to the right, and throw. Doesn't want to go the opposite direction. So, as it was pointed out by former head coach defensive coordinator Rex Ryan yesterday, A lot of guys were discussing why wouldn't they load the left side of the defense, right side of the offense, to keep Jayden from running to the right or rushing to the right, scrambling, force him more to the left, put your best player on the field, and kind of see what happens, right? Like that's kind of a no-brainer. So at this point in time, you don't have your best defensive player on the field. You're probably not in the best defensive scheme. You have 3 timeouts. Why wouldn't you use one? Take one. Put your personnel on the field. Make sure everybody knows what's going on, right? Hey, keep playing ball. We love it that way because that's what gave us the win. The fourth thing that absolutely, blew the play up and gave us the win, cornerback Tyreek Stevenson, who's basically, I think he's in his second year. Last year was his rookie year. He's a solid cornerback, one of the better Bears players. He's a young kid. Let's be honest. He's like 23, I think, give or take. That, before the play even started, he has his back turned to the huddle, turned from the line of scrimmage, and he's basically jawing and trash talking with a bunch of DC fans in the corner of the end zone. If you watch the replays and all the little gadgets they put on there with timers and stuff, the play actually started for 4 seconds before he realized that the ball had even been snapped, like behind him. Okay. So like if I turn around and start talking to the dudes hanging on my wall back there for 4 seconds, and then I turn around and I'm like, oh shit, they snapped the ball. The wide receivers are basically already down the field, kind of starting their tip drill formation, which we're going to talk about in a couple seconds. And then, he literally runs from the offensive right-hand side of the end zone over to the left, basically left center, jumps up with the ball, tips the ball, doesn't really bat it down, but kind of does a volleyball set. And then, oh, by the way, it falls back into Noah Brown, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, for the game-winning touchdown Hail Mary. Oh, my goodness. Complete pandemonium, the whole 9 yards. The Commanders win, the Commanders win, the Commanders win, right? So that's probably the biggest bonehead play, for the last decade. When your team is up by enough to win, and all you have to do is bat the ball down, and you don't, and it becomes the practice tip drill that we learn in, high school, junior high, college ball. I can't fathom what it's like to be on both sides of the ball. Catch that winning touchdown, beat the Bears, go 6-2, or, be the Bears and lose in a heartbreaking fashion on a Hail Mary. But what I can tell you is everybody who was a Commanders fan in that stadium was basically this dude right here in the red circle when that ball got caught by Noah Brown, right? Everybody was screaming. You see the videos from the stadium. The crowd goes nuts. It was already an electric environment throughout the game. People at home celebrating. You see their clips on social media. You see the commentators, the radio guys led by London Fletcher, calling the game on the radio with that amazing play-by-play for the Hail Mary from Jayden Daniels to ultimately Noah Brown. The TV guys between Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, the whole 9 yards, right? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's break it down. What happened on the Hail Mary, right? It's something that both teams and both coaches have come out in press conferences over the last 24 to 36 hours and say that they practice all the time, right? So let's look first at the offense, right? It was actually designed twofold, that 4 receivers from the offense would go downfield. Now, the idea is that they're going to go to about where they were realistically when the tip drill happened on this Hail Mary, basically around the 1 to 2 yard line. A lot of people will say, hey, go into the end zone, like that's where you need to be, but not necessarily, right? Now you're taking the gamble that if somebody does catch it in that big body mass, then they're going to be 1 yard short. You can't argue with that, right? It kind of is what it is. Law of physics, field position, where you are, right? You catch the ball, come down, you're probably going to be short of the goal line. What's going to happen more times than not is that the ball is going to be tipped. So if you took a notice, what Washington did, and they did it really well, is tight end Zach Ertz, wide receiver slot man Luke McCaffrey. Basically, we're going into the mass to jump up to do the tip ball drill. At that point in time, the offense now has two guys going in to either catch the ball and fall into the end zone or tip the ball out, right? Washington then doubles down and says, okay, look, the ball is going to get tipped. We're going to put a guy in the front. We're going to put a guy in the back. If the ball goes sideways, we're probably going to be shit out of luck, right? So Terry McLaurin, number 17, you see in this photo, actually congratulating Noah Brown in the end zone, was the front tip guy. Noah Brown was actually the rear tip guy who was standing in the end zone. So basically, you're trying to cover bases for when Jayden just launches that ball nice and high so that guys can get the high point, tip the ball, and whatever happens, happens. All right. Now, the Bears come in and say, all right, hey, look, here's the deal. We're going to get practice. They're supposed to have practiced basically defending the same thing, right? To the point that somebody's supposed to be on the guy in the back, somebody's supposed to be on the guy in the front. And oh, by the way, 2 to 3 guys are supposed to be in the body mass to not tip the ball, but bat the ball down. So here's where it comes into play of, well, why did you waste a guy to spy Jayden Daniels at the line? Should have been a guy, whether it was a nickelback, another secondary guy, or even a really good linebacker, back at the goal line again, to help defend this play. And basically, as Eberflus and even their defensive coordinator, who I can't even remember his name at this time, basically came out and said, hey, look, it's kind of like basketball, right? That, when you're shooting free throws, you're trying to box out the guys. So, somebody was assigned to be boxing out Noah Brown. Somebody was supposed to be boxing out Terry McLaurin in the front. And then basically the guys in the middle in the mass are trying to bat the ball down. As Paul Spencer chimes in, says, look, so many questions about this play, but why a spy with him not even rushing on Daniels? Not like Jayden's going to run 60 yards. Exactly, right? So first off, Montez Sweat isn't even on the field during the last 2 plays of the game, especially the last one, to create that pressure. I'll take it as a DC fan, right? Thank you. That's number 1. Number 2, Tyreek Stevenson wasn't even paying attention to the snap of the ball, late to the party, and then ended up tipping the ball back to Noah Brown. Number 2, that's my Christmas present. Thank you. I'll take it for the win. And then number 3, how do you not execute this play from a defensive perspective to basically, secure the win that you have already earned in opposing stadium, to go 5-2, so I think now they're 4-3. So if they would have won the game, they would have been 5-2. Now they dropped the 4-3. Commanders picked up the win, went 6-2, and we know where they're going. So, so many things happened on this Hail Mary pass. But look, Jayden did what he had to do, bought himself time. We're going to talk about that time that he did. We're going to talk about how far he threw it, the whole 9 yards. Caleb actually gave a little bit of a presser afterwards. Hey, look, they do a cool off period. I think it's like 15, 20 minutes after the game. And then, basically the stars of the game have to be available for pressers, et cetera, et cetera. So, hey, look, Caleb Williams was visibly frustrated after the Jayden Daniels walk-off Hail Mary, right, to win 18-15 over the Bears. And a lot of people wonder now with that game, even though it wasn't a high-scoring game, you only threw 1 touchdown, does that solidify Jayden Daniels now as the Rookie of the Year over Caleb Williams? And I think it does. Barring Caleb going off and throwing 4 touchdowns every game, 300 yards, and, Jayden kind of going up and being himself, it basically does, right? But we can talk about that in another show. But Caleb said, quote, I did my job and gave us the lead. I can't play defense at the same time. And you could tell that he was visibly frustrated after the game, especially after the Commanders caught that Hail Mary. And, quite honestly, even for an opposing quarterback, I can't blame him, right? And look, one of the things that, came out was what's going to happen to Stevenson. I think he's going to get punished somehow, some way. Do they make him sit the first quarter, first half of the next game? I don't know. Do they fine him for that BS? I don't know. But something's going to happen to him, right? It's not just going to be as simple as the team captains talk to him, the coaching staff talks to him. Hey man, you screwed the pooch and cost us a game, especially in that hotly contested NFC North division. Basically where like all 4 teams are qualified for the playoffs right now, which is stupidly crazy, but it kind of is what it is. But Tyreek Stevenson did address his teammates yesterday about the trash talking with fans prior to the Hail Mary. And, Eberflus said, hey, look, Tyreek's got to do a better job of putting his body on number 85, Noah Brown, who ultimately caught the ball. And that was his ultimate responsibility. And it didn't happen, right? Stevenson went on to quote to Chicago and teammates, my apologies for the lack of awareness and focus. The game ain't over until zeros hit the clock. Can't take anything for granted. Notes taken. Improvement will happen. # bear down. So, look, as a young kid who made the big mistake, cost his team the win, at least he owns up to it. Hopefully the kid can learn from it. But on the flip side, us here in DC will gladly take, the Hail Mary catch to help us go to 6-2. So during that miracle delivery from Jayden Daniels, the air distance of the final play, the Hail Mary, was actually 65.9 yards, so almost 66 yards in the air, which is the third farthest distance on a touchdown pass since 2016, according to NFL Next Gen Stats. So, hey, look, can many guys make that 65, 66-yard throw in the air? Probably not, but Jayden Daniels can. All right, so real quick, we're going to look at some grades, basically for the team, for the Commanders coming out of the Bears game. Look, for being not 100%, doing what he needed to do, managing the game, no turnovers, an awesome touchdown throw at the end, you got to give quarterback play for the Commanders an A, right? Running backs didn't do bad. They picked up the yardage where they need to. They stayed consistent. Kingsbury didn't necessarily call many runs in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure why. B-Rob didn't even get a touch in the fourth quarter, so I don't know if that was to try and speed up the game, try and get some points, more points on the board, or what. So, the running game was kind of non-existent in the latter second half, but hey, look, we'll still give them a B. Wide receiving core gets a B this time. The deep dime to Terry McLaurin for like 65 yards earlier in the game. It's a shame that Terry keeps getting shoestring tackled and can't run those balls right into the end zone, but hey, we'll take it. Tight ends played well, could have did a little better. Zach Ertz kind of appeared when he needed to once again as Jayden's safety net. So I'll give them a solid C. Offensive line did fairly well, especially against this prolific Bears defense. So, hey, look, they only gave up 2 sacks. We'll give them a C. Defensive line did really well, led by Newton, who we're going to highlight here in our game nuggets. We'll give them a B. Linebackers were amazing again between Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. Give them a B. And, surprisingly, I got to give the cornerbacks in the secondary a B for what they did against the 3 wide receivers of the Bears and the Bears tight end. Coaching, I'd probably even give them a B. Maybe tweak it down to like a C just because of Cliff Kingsbury's calling style in the second half, getting away from the run. But overall, they did pretty solid, right? Let's call it as it is. Dan Quinn talked about in the post-game presser about Jayden Daniels after gutting it through the rib injury in the win over Chicago. He's sore today, and much like a lot of the guys after the game, that's pretty typical for a Monday. But I really thought he had a good performance. He has a better update basically yesterday, and, they looked at it, no further injury to the ribs, and basically it's going to be a rest and heal period. Obviously, the deep ball to McLaurin was big. The deep ball to throw for the Hail Mary was big. So, we pushed him on Friday in practice to see what he could do. And we knew that he was going to be a part of basically going to be part of the game plan. He was sore, but a lot of his fellow teammates are today as well. So, look, he stuck it out. Washington has actually held, as we get into our game nuggets, Washington held their opponent scoreless in the first half of consecutive games for the first time since week 10 and 11 of the 97 season. Let that sink in, that Washington held opponents scoreless in the first half of consecutive games when they play 16, 17 games a season in 20 years. Pretty crazy, huh? Terry McLaurin is currently third in the NFL in receiving yards at 579 for, a guy that many people say, hey, look, he's not a number one wide receiver. He's not top 10. He's not top 15. He's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And the stats are just going to keep proving it as the season goes on, right? To kind of double down on Terry McLaurin and his performance on Sunday, Terry McLaurin had more receiving yards than all of the Chicago Bears wide receivers combined. Let that sink in. Excuse me. When you have wide receivers like DJ Moore, who came from Carolina a couple years ago, 2 seasons ago, rookie Rome Odunze, who's pretty good himself, right, for being a rookie, and all the other guys, Terry McLaurin had more yards receiving than Carolina's wide receivers. The highest grades per Pro Football Focus, Newton was amazing at 89.2. Jayden Daniels came in at 80. Zach Ertz, 75. Jeremy Chin had a solid game from his safety spot at 73. And B-Rob chopped in a good 72. Through 8 games so far this season, the Commanders' defense ranks 10th in points and 14th in yards. Last year, under basically when we were abysmal and ended up 4-12, to end up picking second overall. Last year, Washington's defense finished in that 8-game span ranked last, 32nd in both categories. So it's quite a turnaround under defensive coordinator Joe Witt and head coach defensive specialist Dan Quinn. And you kind of see that, right? Because you see the defense or lack of defense that the Dallas Cowboys have now in what Dan Quinn has brought over to DC with Joe Witt. Quite amazing, right? So where does that leave Washington right now? That leaves Washington with basically that first place in the NFC East at 6-2. The Eagles are actually starting to come on a little bit and, put things together, figure out who they are, kind of figure out their offensive identity. Look, Saquon Barkley's been an absolute beast for the last 2 weeks, and I think that's what the offense is going to ride behind. Jalen Hurts kind of figured out who he is on Sunday and even the beginning of last week as well. They played Cincinnati this past Sunday, and they should have beat Cincinnati, and they did, just like Washington did, right? And then it kind of splits in half, right? So you're going to have 2 solid teams in the top of the NFC East. It's going to be a 2-horse race for the NFC East between Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, by the way, we still have to play them twice, once at home, once away in our remaining schedule. Dallas Cowboys are sitting at 3-4. New York Giants are bringing up the bottom of the trash can at 2-5. We still got to play the Cowboys twice. We still got to play the Giants once coming up next Sunday in MetLife Stadium in the Meadowlands. So it'll be super interesting to see, how the division kind of shakes up now that we're about halfway through the NFL season. So, looking at it even further, it's time to do our game balls and gassers. The game balls and gassers segment is brought to you by Jason Fine, aka Attorney Big Al. You can reach him at 1-800-HURT-123, specializing in motor vehicle accidents, slips and falls, workers' compensation, personal injury claims. Has 3 convenient office locations throughout Pennsylvania and New Jersey, with 1 located in Philadelphia, PA, 1 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 1 Pittsburgh, PA, and Steel City. Remember, give Jason a call for all of your legal needs and for legal representation. If you don't win, he doesn't collect. He'd gladly give you a hand. Tell him you saw him in his advertisement here at Out of the Box Sports, and he'll be glad to help you out. That's Jason Fine, a.k.a. Attorney Big Al, at 1-800-HURT-123. So, look, we're not going to beat the horse too much about game balls and gassers. Obviously, a game ball, it's got to go to Jayden for the Hail Mary pass, 65 yards. One's got to go to Noah Brown. Is it super clutch that he caught that ball? Maybe. Who knows? But, it does take some concentration to do a tip drill in the end zone. Time expired, fourth quarter, your team's down to make that winning catch, right? So let's give him one. Let's give a game ball to Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. They played lights out, stopping the run. Other than the big run by DeAndre Swift for the touchdown, they basically made the Bears' offensive run and running game obsolete. The last game ball's got to go to Newton. Newton played lights out. Basically, Newton had a game of his life, had 7 pressures, which ranked first among interior defensive linemen for week 8, had a 31% win rate, which was first in that same category in interior defensive linemen, and was first with 43% pressure rate for interior defensive linemen. Oh, by the way, had a fumble recovery. Whistle didn't die. He ran 100 yards extra for cardio, ran all the way down to the end zone at the other end of the field, and then they realized that he was down by contact. But hey, good for him, coming off with that. Gassers, if there's any gassers to be had, obviously Tyreek Stevenson gets the one from the Bears. Is there really a gasser to give on Washington side of things? Maybe to some extent the offensive unit as a whole, only because we stuttered again almost every time we were in the red zone, right? Let's just be honest and call it as it is. Field goals are good. We got our points, but we need to get back to converting at least half of those red zone trips into touchdowns. Now, let's be honest. We had a screenplay, went for a touchdown, got called back for a penalty because Sam Cosmi was literally 1 yard downfield. So illegal man downfield. And when you saw the replay, here's the line. Here's Sam Cosmi. He wasn't, 5-6 yards down the field. He was literally like 1 yard, but it is what it is, right? Got called back. Zach Ertz touchdown was ruled an incomplete pass. Could have gone either way. Not a touchdown. Another touchdown pass got called back because of a penalty. So we were throwing up the touchdown passes, but then we were shooting ourselves in the foot on the exact same play. So, we got to figure out a way if we're going to, when we play these better teams like the Eagles, like the Falcons, and our other divisional opponents who play us so tough, that we got to convert those red zone trips into touchdowns and not just field goals. In week 8, Washington faced the Bears coming off the bye week. In week 10, even though we're going into week 9, let's just make this quick note that Washington will face the Steelers coming off their bye week after we play the Giants this coming Sunday. Washington's bye isn't until late in the season at week 14. So can our guys stay healthy? Can our guys, muster in just 4 more games until the bye week? Another solid month of football. I'd like to think that we can. So, we'll see what happens, right? Only 3 players have averaged 10-plus yards per target this season for wide receivers with a minimum of 50 targets. Jamar Chase, pretty awesome dude. Justin Jefferson, pretty awesome dude. Probably the top 2 wide receivers in the NFL. And then, oh, by the way, number 3 is Terry McLaurin. McLaurin's just a stud, right? All right. Going back to the Hail Mary pass, another game nugget for you. Jayden Daniels held that ball for 12.7 seconds, which is basically unheard of. When quarterbacks are basically trying to get rid of the ball in like 2, 3, maybe 4 seconds. Jayden Daniels held onto that ball for 12.7 seconds on that 65-yard Hail Mary. And it was the first touchdown pass with a time to throw over 10 seconds and the new next-gen era stats era since 2016. Pretty awesome. And like I said, he even accounted for about, I think they said it was like 40 to 42 yards laterally scrambling to buy that time. All right. Moving forward, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with it because, it kind of is what it is. It's the Giants. The Giants are going to play us tough. They just came off a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers where they lost 26-18, dropping them to 2-6, making the Pittsburgh Steelers 6-2, who we're going to face in 2 weeks. And, look, Daniel Jones kind of was Daniel Jones in the New York Giants for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones was 24-38 for 264 yards and 1 interception, which is basically the interception at the end of the game for the Steelers to secure the win. Tyrone Tracy Jr. had 20 carries for 145 yards. Actually had a really good rushing game with 1 touchdown. Darius Slayton, who's always dangerous against us, had 4 receptions for 108 yards. Really good note coming up about Tracy that will definitely help us out in the long run on Sunday. Look, New York only got 1 field goal in the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, they were down 6-3 to Pittsburgh. New York got another field goal to make it 6-6 in the second quarter. Swap field goals with Pittsburgh, went into halftime 9-9. Pittsburgh came out, got a touchdown. Pittsburgh came out in the fourth quarter, got another touchdown, making it 23-9. Lo and behold, Tracy had one of his touchdown runs, 45-yard banger to make it 23-15. Pittsburgh and New York ended up swapping field goals for a final score of 26-18. New York did amass almost 400 yards of total offense, 237 yards of passing offense, 157 yards of rushing for about 5.9 yards per play. Now, obviously, New York lost a fumble. New York had an interception, had 11 penalties, punted 4 times, and allowed 4 sacks. All good things for Washington, right? One of the things that's even better, and it'll be interesting to see how much of a presence that he has in the game. Devin Singletary, I'm not sure if he's 100% healthy, but they might need him in a bigger role. Why? Because running back Tyrone Tracy Jr., who the rookie who just came off of a 145-yard rushing performance and a touchdown, is now in concussion protocol. It is unlikely, unless things really progress right now with him, that he's going to be available for Sunday's game. So, it wasn't one of those, hey, quick, light, mild concussions. Like, it sounds like there's a little bit more to the concussion factor than, kind of like what Coleman's was a week ago, even though Coleman ended up missing a game as well, right? It's kind of the thing that, to get through concussion protocol, especially if you get a good one, you're going to miss a week. It's kind of just the way it is. So one of the things that, looking at the Giants game, that we ourselves, the Commanders, kind of need, I don't want to say work on, but figure out, is offensive linemen. We had a lot get banged up in the game. Coleman was out. They moved Lucas over to left tackle. Lucas ended up getting hurt. So basically the Washington Commanders only had 1 offensive tackle in their practice squad, who was Anim Dankwa. They worked out a couple guys today, actually, to start off the week, or actually, basically the week of practice. And they actually worked out Yadni Kajuste. Kajuste spent time with Bobby Johnson, who's the offensive line coach, who's basically been turning that group around since last season. He also spent time on the Falcons staff when Dan Quinn was there, and basically has some ties to the team. So, excuse me. So it's super interesting that, hey, look, for whatever reason, they ended up releasing Anim Dankwa from the practice squad, signing Bobby Hart, and they're probably going to end up signing Kajuste as well. So, to basically give us a little bit of depth, maybe even some immediate starting, depending on the health and quality of Lucas, and whether we should be getting Coleman back for this game this weekend, which would be a huge boost for us, especially the way that Coleman, the rookie left tackle, has been playing lights out so far this season and protecting Jayden Daniels. But don't let the record fool you. New York is 2-5 and 0-4, respectively, at home. They have 31 sacks on the year, solid defense, and they always play us tough, and they always give Washington problems. DQ will have them ready to roll, as he says, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. We're traveling up 95, going to the Meadowlands to play at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. I think we're going to end up winning this game just because, hey, look, we're going to have an interception. We're probably going to have a fumble recovery. Jayden's going to be healthier. We're hopefully going to get Coleman back on the line. Giants left tackle was lost for the season 2 games ago. They're still trying to piecemeal together stuff. Look, they still got the sensational rookie wide receiver Malik Neighbors. They still got Darius Slay. They still got a solid defense, which is basically still going to give us problems. But I think between Jayden, our wide receiver core, and our tight ends, we're going to be able to outmatch them. So what I think is going to happen, I think we're going to be close to another 30 spot. I hope, maybe. I think we're going to rebound after the Bears game and put together another solid performance between rushing and passing. So I think we're going to be basically around like a 28-20. Look, the Giants are going to get some points on us unless our defense comes out like we did the last game and just play absolutely lights out. So let's call it 28-17 Washington. We'll see how that does going forward, whether that score sticks or not. But I think we're going to be good enough to beat the Giants, go to 7-2, and then we'll see what happens when we face the Pittsburgh Steelers, who unfortunately are starting to get on a roll, right? So as something we started doing 2 weeks ago, we're going to continue this throughout the season. Let's do a quick pick of the week 9 slate games here. So Thursday night game is going to be New England at the Jets. Man, off the cuff, Jets are horrible. Patriots are horrible. It's at the Jets. Can you really see the Jets going 2-7? Ooh, probably not. Aaron Rodgers figures it out. Jets are going to win over the Patriots. I would not be surprised if the Patriots win. The Saints at Carolina. Derek Carr is possibly slated to come back for the New Orleans Saints. Panthers don't know who they are. They just traded their number 1 wide receiver today to the Baltimore Ravens. Saints win. Just picked it. Washington's going to win over New York. Dolphins at Buffalo. Man, Dolphins don't know who they are. Not in sync yet with Tua coming back. Josh Allen and the Bills roll over Dolphins. Los Angeles Chargers at the Cleveland Browns. Browns are riding that high after the Baltimore win this past Sunday against the Ravens. But, man, at home, I still think Jim Harbaugh and Herbert figure out a way to get it done. Los Angeles Chargers. Oh, sorry. The Thursday night game was the Texans against the Jets. Oh, goodness. I was mixing up the logos. The Jets are going to lose. Sorry. I get it. Stephon Diggs was lost to the season for an ACL injury yesterday, actually Sunday. But, CJ Stroud and company go into New York, New Jersey, technically, figure out a way to get it done. And, yeah, the Jets are going to lose. Sorry, I mixed up those logos. Patriots and Titans at Nashville. Man, Titans don't have a clue who they are. Patriots are going to go in there and win that game. Dallas at Atlanta. Man, you'd think that Dallas is going to get their shit together and get back on track, but Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, he's just too hot right now. Falcons are going to win at home in Atlanta. Raiders at the Bengals. Man, you got to think that the Bengals are going to figure out, especially at home, Joey B., T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, they're going to figure it out. Bengals are going to win over the Raiders, even though Ken's not going to like that prediction. The Broncos at the Ravens. The Broncos are playing really good ball right now, led by rookie quarterback Bo Nix. Ravens just have that crazy two-headed monster in Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. As much as I would love to see the Broncos win and the Ravens lose 2 in a row, it's not going to happen. Ravens are going to win. The Bears at the Cardinals. Bears are going to rebound after the heartbreaking loss to my Commanders Sunday evening. They're going to beat the Cardinals out in Phoenix. Jacksonville at the Eagles. Man, it's not even going to be a game. Eagles are going to win at home. Rams against the Seahawks should be one of the better games of the Sunday slate. Rams are figuring out who they are. They got Cooper Kupp and Nakua back last week. Seattle's not a bad team. Let's be honest, right? So, man, I just think that Matt Stafford and company, those guys are on a little bit of a roll right now. And, they're doing good. Rams are going to win over Seattle. The Lions and the Packers in Green Bay. Man, what a game. If Jordan Love plays, it's going to be even better contested. But, look, Detroit came out, dropped 50 or whatever it was, 52 points this past week. Lions are on a roll. Even though they go into Green Bay, Lions are going to win. Colts at the Vikings. Joey Flacco is coming back in for Richardson after Richardson had to tap out for a play because he was tired in the fourth quarter. Man, the Vikings find a way to rebound at home. It's going to go to the Vikings. Monday night game is going to be Tampa Bay at Kansas City. At Kansas City, if this was in Tampa Bay, I'd give the upset to Tampa Bay, but unfortunately, Kansas City, Xavier Worthy, Kelsey getting his first touchdown this past game. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to see him rolling undefeated, Kansas City's going to get the nod. They're going to find a way to do it at home. And that's the Week 9 slate. As a result of Washington's win this past Sunday, they came out in most rankings between the NFL rankings on NFL Today, NFL.com, CBS Sports, ESPN came out number 5 in most power rankings. If the playoffs were to start today, Washington would be the number 2 seed behind Detroit Lions at number 1 and would face off against the Philadelphia Eagles as the number 7 seed. Wow, pretty awesome, right? Atlanta would have the number 3 seed against the number 6 Minnesota Vikings, and Arizona would be the number 4 seed against the Green Bay Packers at number 5 in the NFC. Our next show will be Tuesday, November 5th. Wow, jumping into November already, right? Thanksgiving and Christmas will be here before you know it. Little programming note for all of you still following along in tonight's show. Ken Fry will be doing the Bat Cave, his infamous New York Mets show, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. here at Out of the Box Sports. More than likely a season wrap-up and how the Mets have done, even though they got knocked out of the playoffs. Made a deep playoff run with that great roster and high payroll this year, but pretty promising season for where they were a year or two ago, right? So catch Ken with the Bat Cave tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Ken is also doing the Silver and Black Lair Kings show Thursday at 10 a.m. on the Out of Box Sports Network as well, where he covers the LA Kings for hockey. For those of you that may be hockey fans, tune into those. I'll make a shameless plug for my Washington Capitals, who have a big game tonight as well. And they kind of picked up where they left off, and they've been pretty hot so far this season. Last but not least, I'm going to make one little shameless plug for a special event coming up. As most of you know or follow along, I actually do sports memorabilia on the side. And Saturday, November 23rd, in Prince Frederick, Maryland, courtesy of Prince Frederick Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, is going to be our annual Toys for Tots event. And this is a big event for us every year. And basically, we fill up a couple trucks and even a tractor trailer load of toys throughout the day. And in exchange for your toys and cash and gift cards and everything else to help out the local community, we always bring in some professional athletes to do free autographs. And typically it's, even though this is a football show, it's DMV Washington related. We usually bring in a lot of Washington Capitals. And this year it's going to be headlined by Washington Capitals Nick Backstrom, Braden Holtby, Carl Alsner, Craig Laughlin, and Devontae Pelly-Smith from the Stanley Cup Championship team of 2018. So that event runs from 9 to 4, and that's going to be courtesy of Prince Frederick Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram and above average graphing. So come on down to Prince Frederick, Maryland, donate your toys or your gift cards or your cash, get some free autographs in return, meet the players, and have a good time. We usually have Santa there, the Grinch, a bunch of activities for the kids, moon bounces, game stations set up, the whole 9 yards. So come on down for a great cause. That's going to be on Saturday, November 23rd. Last but not least, if you'd like to have a show, sit here and talk about your favorite team and basically do what we do every week, shoot us a message, reach out to us. We'd love to have you. We're always looking for new programming here at Out of the Box Sports. We can pick a time, day of the week, where you can sit and talk about your favorite sports team, any sport, any team. We'd love to have you, add you to the lineup here at Out of the Box Sports. As always, thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next Tuesday, November 5th, same time, 8:30 p.m. Be a friend, tell a friend, share the show, give us a like, follow and subscribe at Out of the Box Sports, and follow us for all of your Commanders information on and off the field. Until then, have a good night.